Okay, hi everybody, this is Sam. I'm going to read chapter 5 from Twilight Hunger now. Dante stood outside in the darkness, the wind in his face, tangling its cool damp fingers in his hair, just a hint of rain looming. He felt its touch on his skin in that wind. He tasted it. The waves from the sea crashed to the shoreline just beyond the house, his house, or it had been once. Warm yellow light spilled from its windows, as if welcoming him home. But he knew better. Someone was inside. He could feel and taste them the same way he did the rain in the air. A woman. When he had decided to come here, he hadn't even been certain he would find the place still standing. Last time he'd seen it, the house had been on the verge of ruin, but no more. Someone had gone to great pains to restore the house he had built over a century ago. The white flagstone walkway and that curved up to the front door was just as he remembered it. The lamp post at the far end, like sentries. Oh, they hadn't been electric, of course, as they were now, nor had the light inside the house, but the shutters were black, and the paint was white and fresh, and the chimney was the same size and shape, even though the bricks were all brand new. The door was different, he noted. It had been white, with 4 glass panes and the fantail pattern in the top. The new door was far more elaborate, wider, flanked by tooled hardwood borders and a wide mantel arching over the top. Artificial flowers were affixed in that arched mantel. It struck him for a moment how false that was, how ridiculous. The smell of plastic and silk on the things made a mockery of the beauty they tried to imitate. Artificial flowers were a sacrilege. An oval of stained glass stretched almost the whole length of the door, and on the handle was gleaming brass. The place looked almost new again. 2 cars sat in the white gravel driveway, both of them foreign and fast. Money lived here now, a woman with wealth and youth. He tasted that on her as well. There was a man, older, robust, strong. While the female had a weakness about her, he didn't smell sex in the air, so he assumed the relationship was platonic. He was curious, he had to admit, eager to see what had been done to the inside of the place, and he couldn't leave anyway, since his near miss with the scarred man, he had found his every haven invaded, his every familiar hunt under watch. The man knew his secret somehow. So Dante had come back, here, to a place he hadn't used in over a century, to find safety and solace, until he could figure out what to do. Obviously, he'd stayed away too long. Someone was living here. Give me a minute, I want to make sure something. Oh, this one ain't that long. I might be able to finish this, maybe even read another one. Not that it mattered. He walked around to the rear of the house, found the willow tree still there, but so much larger than before he had to look twice. God, time passed in a blur. Easily he leapt into a low-hanging limb and began to climb. The smooth bark, flexible limb, the whisper of the dangling greenery, all these were familiar. He'd planted this tree here 100 years ago. As he neared the level of the master bedroom, he stopped, tipping his head to one side and opening his senses. He felt something, not quite a scent on the air, something else, something that stroked his nerve endings to life like a magnet moving over metal shards. What was that? He crept closer, climbing from the limb onto the railing that surrounded the balcony, his hands curling around its cool metal. Then he lowered himself down onto the balcony itself and walked closer to the closed glass doors. Sheer white curtains hung in those doors, sheer enough that he could see through them into the bedroom beyond. The woman lay sleeping in a 4-poster bed. Her long hair was the color of cinnamon, lush and long, and spread over the pillows. Her skin was creamy white, and as pale as if he had already tasted her. Naked arms rested atop the thin white sheets, and he sensed was all that covered her. Her neck was long and slender. Dante licked his lips, and his desire stirred. He didn't make a habit of sampling innocent blood. He killed, yes. He could live on cold, stale blood stored in plastic bags, as some did.
This was Mom's, and don't hung this up.
Me? Because I found it on the floor. I'm sorry, people. Wait a minute.
This was my mom's. See, for Mom, it was for her birthday.
Oh, I didn't know. I found it on the floor, honey.
See, look at the nose.
Well, put it in her bag then. Now, where was I?
You were at
No.
the...
I'm just trying to remember. But he didn't. If it can't, I'll fit it. But he didn't really call that living, so he killed. But mostly only those who dearly needed killing. Other times he paid for his desires to be stated.
This is for my mom's birthday, y'all.
Honey,
I'm
trying
to
read to them.
Birthday. You want to see inside?
She made it in school.
That's what it looks like inside.
I'll continue reading in 1 minute.
That's what it looks like. Sorry, guys, I just couldn't hardly.
You're making the laptop jam into my knee.
That's what it looks like.
Okay. Can't get it out in front of my face.
Alright, Sam's gonna put this in because tomorrow's my mom's birthday, y'all. So if you want to come up here and celebrate, you can.
Watch it. Do you want me to put something right here for you? Like stick something right here because it looks like something fell off.
Yeah, it's glue.
I could put them eyeballs and lips on it. The stickers that I got. Okay. Oh no! I'll take it off because you might rip it.
Well, see y'all later. I'm going down the stairs to have my birthday party.
Her birthday's on the 23rd. Okay. There were women who specialized in satisfying needs like his. They were discreet and paid enough to keep them that way. This woman, she wasn't one of them, and yet he was drawn to her, pulled. He wanted her. He stood so close to the doors that his breath, though cool, fogged the glass. He wiped it away, looking at her, and he wished silently that she would tug the sheets away, so he could see her more fully. Know for sure if she wore anything against her skin underneath the covers. The only reason I didn't want to read that while she was in here is that it's getting to a certain part that I wouldn't want her to hear. Almost before the thought was complete, the woman lifted her hand to the top of the sheet and peeled it slowly away from her body. She was completely naked, as he had suspected. For a moment, all he could do was look at her and drink in her beauty. Small breast, but soft. Their tips rose-colored and plump. She was far too thin, ribs showing clearly beneath her skin. The hair between her... This is where it's going to get a little sexual for me. I mean, I love this book, but... The hair between her thighs was the same burnished color as that on her head. He let his gaze move up her body again, let it linger on her breast, and he thought about tasting them. And even as he thought it, her nipples stiffened. Frowning, Dante watched with some amazement. Could she be aware of his thoughts on some level? Could he exercise mind control over a weak-willed mortal? He knew that, but he would at least have to be trying. The odd stray thought shouldn't... He shifted his gaze to her face and wondered should he happen to think about her creamy thighs parting for him, whether she would... Her legs moved apart. Dante shivered with arousal and hunger and not a little fear. It was as he was backing away that his mind cleared, giving him the answer he should have seen right away. Suddenly he understood what he had been sensing earlier, that prickling awareness and attraction. She was one of them. She was one of the chosen. He backed across the balcony, reaching the railing and jumped it without hesitation. On the ground he stood looking around him and then out to the sea, as if it held the answers. If he'd had anywhere else in the world to go, he would have gone, and gladly. But the sun should be up soon, and this place was the only haven he had left. He could create others, but that would take time. No, for now, he could only stay here. But he was going to have to avoid the woman at all costs. Never had he experienced that sort of mind link with a mortal, never. Nor had he with others of his own kind. What the hell did this mean? Yeah, she was one of the chosen, but it's more of a bond between them. He walked out toward the cliffs, and at the familiar spot looked down at the stone ledge. Some 15 feet below, there was a small opening in the stone wall that backed that ledge. It was still shrouded by the vines he had planted ages ago. They sprouted around his feet where he stood and grew from the bits of soil along the cliff face, draping downward to cover the cave's entrance like a curtain. The only reason that I didn't want to start over is that I'm so close to the end now that I didn't want to start over, you know. He hoped the passage that ran beneath the earth all the way back to the house hadn't collapsed by now, and he hoped the rooms hidden beneath the old house hadn't disintegrated to dust after so much time. She was daydreaming about Dante again. He stood over her bed, staring down at her, just stood there. He didn't say anything, and he hadn't touched her. She lay there. My tongue got twisted. She lay there, staring back at him, wishing he would do or say something, anything, but he didn't. She opened her mouth to speak and found she couldn't. So instead she looked at him. It was odd that she knew his face so well, she thought idly as she perused it in her dream. It was angular and cruel, longish and shadowed. His jawbone was sharp, his nose narrow, the eyes set deep and so dark that he seemed to be looking out at her from somewhere deep within, from his soul maybe. He wanted to see her, yes. He wanted to see her. Her eyes, once held by his, were locked there, and she knew what he wanted. All she wanted was to please him. She lifted a hand, peeled her covers away, and lay there, completely naked and unashamed, as his dark, intense eyes burned over her, every part of her. Touch me, she thought. For the love of God, just touch me. She blinked and he was gone. Just that suddenly. Awake now, Morgan lay in her bed. Her covers were on the floor and her body was alive, but she was alone. God, these dreams were taking on a life of their own, weren't they? Maybe she needed to think about some sort of therapy. Not that she hadn't dreamed about him over and over every night since she had come to live here, but this time it had been different. It had been real. She sat up slowly, ran a hand through her hair, and got to her feet. She pulled on a satin robe the color of cream, walked to the glass doors and opened them, stepping out into the balcony, inhaling the night air deeply. It tasted good. Then she paused and stared straight ahead. A man stood on the cliffs, wind buffeting him as it was buffeting her. He was staring out toward the sea, and she couldn't really see his face, and yet there was something so incredibly familiar about him. The fall of his hair, his stance, something. A fist seemed to close around her stomach. As clouds skittered away from the moon, and just for an instant his face was touched by moonlight. Dante, she whispered his name, breathed it. And as if he had heard her, even though it was impossible from that distance, he turned sharply, looked right at her. It can't be. Morgan closed her eyes and took 3 open-mouthed breaths as her heart hammered in her chest. It can't be. She opened her eyes again. The cliffs, the sea, the wind, and nothing else. No one was there. No one was there at all. Let me debate if I can actually read this other chapter. Why not? I'll be able to read 2 chapters in this, so I'll have to add chapter 5 and 6. Okay. Chapter 6. Maxine leaned back in the ergonomic chair and blinked her eyes several times. You didn't blink often enough when you stared at a computer screen all day. She read that somewhere it wasn't good for your vision. The front door opened and Storm came in a big white bag from the bakery in one hand and the morning mail in the other. Time to take a break, she called. Carbs, calories, and cream filling. Just what the doctor ordered. Max sighed, pushing the chair back. It rolled on its casters from the computer's desk to the middle of the floor in what used to be the living room and was now an office. If you use the term loosely, it more closely resembled an explosion in a paper and file folder factory with computers, lots of computers. Storm dropped the bag on her own desk, sat down, and peered inside. I got jelly and cream filled, and now I can't decide. How many are in there? Maxine asked, lifting her brows. 6. Storm didn't look up. The donuts had her mesmerized. Better go for one of each, then. She looked up, then brows arched. You think? Oh yeah, far better than the risk of making the wrong choice. I like the way your mind works, Stormy said, smiling as she reached out into the bag to pluck out a donut. Max got out of her chair and wandered into the kitchen, which was still a kitchen, where she poured 2 cups of fresh coffee. Did you ever wonder just how screwed up I must be to be in the same town, in the same house, in the same rut after all this time? No. Max smiled at the sound of the word because it was donut muffled. She carried the 2 mugs back into the room in time to see Stormy taking another bite and closing her eyes in ecstasy. Max set Storm's cup down in front of her and bent to help herself to a donut, knowing they would vanish if she didn't. You care to elaborate on that answer, or are you just going to go with the 1-syllable reply? Stormy swallowed, licked her lips, took a sip of her coffee. She still had a ring of powdered sugar around her mouth, but what the hell? Who wouldn't be in the same house? Shoot, girl, your mother gave it to you free and clear. You'd have been nuts not to take it, and I fail to see any rut. You're running not 1, but 2 businesses, both turning a profit, I might add. Barely, Maxine muttered. She sighed, dunked her donut, and took a big soggy bite. When she finished, she dropped the first of her 2 bombshells. Web page design is getting boring, Stormy. To tell you the truth, I'm thinking about dropping it. Stormy blinked. Dropping it? Closing it down. Setting her coffee mug on her desk, Storm got to her feet. Why would you do that? That's where you earn most of your income. Yeah, but it was never my life's work. I mean, it's okay, I'm good at it, but it's not my dream job, never was. So what are you telling me? They're hiring over as spies are us? Max shot her a quick glance. Don't even joke about that. Then what? Storm threw her hands in the air, turning in a slow circle and searching the ceiling for an explanation. I thought this side business of yours was enough to satisfy your inner snook, Max. I mean, hasn't it been? No, it hasn't. If anything, it's only whetted my appetite. Max had kind of stumbled into the realm of internet crime investigations when one of her web clients asked her advice in dealing with a cyberstalker a year ago. Since then, she had helped track down a half a dozen others by tracing them through their super anonymous, supposedly untraceable screen names. She had even helped to bust up several hoax rings involving around so-called paranormal sciences scam artists who went online hawking everything from psychic readings to ghost-busting powders, which was perfectly legal until you tied them to their partners, who harassed and sometimes frightened gullible people into believing they needed otherworldly help, then fed information to the scam artist, who used it to convince the client he was really in touch with the other side. All of this had given Max the opportunity to touch base with her favorite cop now and then. Not that that had any bearing on her decision to move into this line of work. So what would you say if I told you I was thinking about embarking on another little enterprise? She asked. Storm turned to face her, searched her face wearily. A third business? I'm dropping the web designing services, so it would only be a second business. And in fact, it would be more like taking the existing one to a new, higher level. What do you have in mind? Max wiped the donut sugar from her fingers onto her jeans and went to her desk. She opened a drawer, took out a sheet of paper, slid it across the surface. Take a look at this and tell me what you think. Storm came closer, leaned over it, reading it aloud. Maxine Stewart, licensed private. Then she looked up. Licensed private investigator. Since when? It just came today. I sent in the application months ago. Maxie, look, I know it sounds way over the top, but if you think about it, it's what we've been doing anyway. Just in cyberspace instead of real time. They can't shoot you in cyberspace. Storm rolled her eyes. Who else knows about this? Max shrugged. Maxine Stewart, who else knows? Max lowered her eyes. Well, Lou knows. Lou Malone. I figured as much. He probably encouraged this, didn't he? Well, he, helped me with the application process. He's one of my references. Uh-huh. Look, I'm good at this, and Lou's already got a few cases ready to toss my way. Hell, I don't know why you don't just jump that man's bones and get it over with, Max. I intend to, just as soon as I can get him cornered. Stormy's eyes widened, and Max smiled in sheer nasty delight. But one thing has nothing to do with the other. If I was doing this just to be closer to Lou, I'd have joined the force. It would have been easier. Yeah, right. Isn't the old croc due to retire pretty soon? There was a throat clearing, and they both turned to see the old croc himself standing in the doorway. Max couldn't judge for sure how long he'd been standing there, how much he might have heard. She figured the man's bones would more easily succumb to any jumping she might attempt if she could sneak up on him, take him by surprise, and that sort of thing. He was too thin, so his suit looked a little on the baggy side. Am I interrupting anything? Stormy turned her back to him and made wide eyes at Max. Max ignored her. Come on in, Lou. Did you smell the donuts or what? He didn't smile. He didn't tease her in return the way he usually did. It's kind of delicate. Frowning, Maxine walked over to where he stood. He didn't wait. Instead, he turned, stepped out onto the porch. When she joined him there and closed the doors behind her, he said, I'll buy you a cup of coffee. We can talk there. All right, sounds serious. Yeah, I need your help with something. It's sort of right up your alley, Max, or I'd never ask. Why not? Why not what? Why would you never ask? He drew a heavy he drew a breath, sighed heavily. 'Cause you're brand new at this kind of thing, and I sort of had it in my mind to start you out with something a little more milquetoast. Background checks on subjects, crap like that. Got that much faith in me, do you? You're a kid. I'm 25. Like I said, shut up, Lou. She yanked open his car door and sat beside him. He didn't take her to the coffee shop as she had expected. Instead, he pulled around the drive-through window of a fast food joint and got 2 large coffees, one black, one with 2 creams and 3 sugars. She smiled as he rattled off the order without asking her. He knew exactly how she liked her coffee. His bones, she mused, were practically jumped already.
My brothers.
He drove to the nearest parking area, shut the car off, and turned in his seat. Get him out of here, Patricia. I'm busy. Go play with him, please. Please, Patricia, I'm busy. I don't want him going around touching the laptop. He'll make it go off. Please, can you go play with him out in the hall or something, please? Take out with you. Oh, just go. Take it with you, Pat, and go play with it. Please. Please, Patricia. I still got a couple of pages left to do. Please take them.
You always give me some medicine?
After I read this, go. I'll yell at you when I'm done. Go.
Alright.
Shut the door. Shut the door. Thank you. Shut the door. No, you didn't. Come on, Patricia. Shut it. I can't get up. Shut it. She doesn't listen. Ah! Okay, it's shut now. I just don't remember if any of this part has any nasty bits in it. He drove to the nearest parking area, shut the car off, and turned in his seat to face her. Gee, Lou, if you want to take me parking, maybe we should aim for something just a little more secluded. His face colored. Yeah, right. There's an old gravel bed south of town where everyone used to go and make out back in high school. You know it? He avoided her eyes. Of course I know it. So you've been there. Yeah, shining lights on kids who ought to know better and sending them home to their mamas. Now, do you want to talk business or do you want to play, Maxie? She wanted to play with him now, but she'd obviously pissed him off. He always got pissed off when she flirted with him, even a little bit. Fine business, go ahead. She sat back in her seat and sipped her coffee. Okay, there's this woman. She's a friend of mine, a good friend. Fingernails raked across a chalkboard inside her head, and Maxine sat up straighter. Her name is Lydia Jordan. She runs Haven House. Max blinked now as her mind filled in the blanks. That's the girls' shelter downtown for runaway teens in trouble, he nodded. But I thought that was run by a pair of former prostitutes. Again, he nodded. She lifted her eyebrows and stared at him. This friend of yours is a hooker, was a hooker. And how the hell is that you know her so well, she asked, and she really didn't care how bitchy it sounded. He smiled at her. Hell, Max, if I wasn't old enough to be your father, I'd almost think you were jealous. You're nowhere near old enough to be my father. He was, technically, but she wasn't about to admit it. He sighed, shaking his head. I met Lydia the first time I picked her up for soliciting. I was a rookie, and she couldn't have been more than 18. I must have brought her in a dozen times over the years before she finally got herself straightened out. I didn't know Kimbra as well, but the two of them met on the streets, became friends, and helped each other start over. That's the partner, the other half of the dynamic duo, he nodded. They got legitimate jobs, took classes, and once they had themselves taken care of, they reached back down to help other girls like them. I think they'd both spent some time at Haven House before they took it over. Anyway, none of that matters right now. Of course it matters. Just how close are you to this Lydia person, Lou? He sent her a look she rarely saw on him, an angry one that told her very clearly that she was crossing some unseen, unspoken boundary line that she'd damn well better back off. She sighed and looked away. Kimbra Sykes is dead, murdered, and Lydia has somehow got it in her head that some kind of supernatural forces were involved. Maxine was unimpressed. Did a lot of drugs while she was turning tricks, did she? No, but she'd always been incredibly superstitious. She wanted to ask him why the hell he thought she would care how superstitious this ex-whore might be. She hated the woman instantly, automatically hated her. So what makes you think I can do anything to help her? He put a hand on her shoulder. Max, have I done something to make you mad at me? No, she didn't even look at him as she spoke. Well then, how come you're sitting there puckered up like a prune? He only sighed when she refused to answer. Then he shook his head. I just thought that hell you know all about this kind of stuff. Remember that woman who thought her house was haunted and how she hired that internet ghostbuster to come clear it out for her? and it turned out he was the one haunting it. Yeah, I remember. You knew right off the bat it was a hoax, and you were able to convince that woman mostly because you knew so much about the subject. You went in there telling her that a real ghost would never behave the way hers was. Remember? Had her eating out of your hand. She shrugged, warmed just a little at his praise. I'm pretty good when I know my subject, and you know this subject, you and your skeptical mind, always having to dig into anything you come upon that doesn't seem quite right. Learn all you can about it and then proceed to debunk it. She shrugged. It's not that I don't believe in the paranormal. I just know that 99% of the ghosts, goblins, psychics, and channelers out there are con artists. I believe what I see with my own eyes, not what people tell me. And even when I see it with my own eyes, I don't believe much of what the government or any of the authority figure tells me. If that makes me a skeptic, then yeah, I'm a skeptic. You're a skeptic. She shrugged. I still don't see what you want me to do for your friend. I want you to convince her that her best friend was not murdered by a vampire. Maxine's head came up very slowly. Her eyes met his, looking for the hint of humor that would tell her he was joking, but it wasn't there. Vampires? Yeah, it's that the craziest freaking thing you have ever heard or what? She nodded vaguely, but in her mind she was back at that burned-out building 5 years ago, with the soldiers, the lights. Hell, she had always known it would come back to haunt her. She knew things she shouldn't know, things no one should know. When can I meet this Lydia person? Then you'll do it? He asked. She met his eye, swallowed hard. For you, sure, Lou. You know I can't say no to you. I just wish you'd get around to asking me for something a little more fun. He laughed uneasily, patted her on the head, and looked away. Then he started the car up again and drove her back home. That's the end of chapter 6. Now, where in the world did I put that bookmarker? Okay, so bye everybody. Tomorrow I'll be posting chapter 7 whenever I can get around to it. But tomorrow I'll have it posted. Bye everybody.